Hello Nippies, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, hi, hello, I'm Nips, a freelance artist, and today we're going to be doing a speed paint of a song illustration cover on Spotify by an artist named Ruben, who you should definitely check out. The song is called Lean On Me, and by the time you're watching this, it's already out. Go listen to it. It's so beautiful, amazing. I looped it throughout the entirety of this piece, and when he reached out to me in order to do this piece, he linked me some off-cell drawings that he liked of mine as reference. And for those of you that don't know, Offcell is my personal 18+ comic, which I'll link down below. And so he wanted something like very tender and very like warm. Aside from that, he gave me pretty much liberty to do anything. I wanted to use this piece to really experiment with going out of my comfort zone, you know, doing some background, doing like some painting. Like I really didn't want to do line art. I wanted to do some fun colors, color theory and stuff. And I say all of this because I had to extend the deadline several times. As one does, you kind of get too carried away in your experimentations. And if you decide to use your commission time in order to experiment, it can sometimes go wrong. And so then last minute you're trying to kind of make it work to a standard that you feel proud of and that you want to turn in, and then it just doesn't work. And so I got really lucky that Ruben and the team were very lenient with me, and they were super understanding about just knowing that this was an experimental process kind of to begin with. And before I even accepted this commission, I did kind of a sketch pre-hand. Just took me like 30 minutes to kind of give them a vibe of what I had in mind for the song, because I didn't want to take the commission without having an idea to begin with. They really liked the direction, and I just kind of went from there. As the drawing goes on, you'll see that it evolves into almost something that it was just not at the beginning. One of the things that I was really struggling with in this piece is the lighting in order to get the effect that I wanted, but also so that it looked nice small. I was really kind of struggling with the colors and the saturations. Everything was popping a little too much so that it wasn't overwhelming, and it took away from the calm, like ethereal effect. But also I wanted to just do what I wanted. Most of the time in my head, when I think of like experimenting, I usually have like a general goal in mind, and then I try to let myself go to do whatever I want. So I usually try not to say no to whatever my idea is. I kind of just go with the flow. But what happens is that I just take it too far. You like over render it, or you kind of like lose the plot. And so I felt like I maybe lost the plot several times on this. So for example, this color scheme here and this saturation level / values, I really like. Like if I were to compare it to the finished one, I almost kind of like maybe this one more. And the stages of this piece are so different that I almost consider them just different pieces. I streamed this at one point, so you'll see the camera just show up. You'll notice that I'll go back and forth between the current edit that I'm doing and the original sketch, because I kind of was letting myself go, but the more that I looked at the original sketch, I felt very defeated. Like, the amount of time that this piece took me is embarrassingly long. Like, I should not have taken as long as I did on this piece for what the finished product looks like, but a lot of experimentations, at least for me, tend to go that way because I don't really know what I'm doing. And especially if it's an experimentation done on a piece that's meant to be turned in, I have to make sure that even though I'm experimenting and not knowing what I'm doing, I still have to turn in a piece that is like up to standard. And so it will take longer than normal if I end up losing the plot and going in a direction that is kind of like I need to fix almost. And so that happens, like I said, several times. You'll see me here messing with the colors. I eventually add a black and white layer because I feel like I'm losing the values and I'm going too much into like adding very saturated colors and just kind of making it look a little too poppy and losing the very calm and warm vibe. This kind of color scheme is one that I really liked, and it's something that maybe, like, now looking back at the finished product, you guys will see as we go on in the piece, I kind of almost wish that I had tried to stick to this like color scheme a little bit more closely. I really like how it looks. This is a big turning point here, and you'll notice that I start adding a lot of really saturated colors. And I remember on stream I was like, okay, what if I just go the complete opposite direction and I just go like super saturated, just make everything like anime. You'll see that I make like the background, I try to do like the anime background, really just make that blue radiant anime sky and just kind of go the more cartoony route, and I honestly really like it. It definitely has two completely different vibes, and you'll see also for a while I really struggled with the level of rendering. So I didn't want to render this too in detail, one because it just had to look good from far away, and if I over rendered the details I felt like I might just lose like how pretty it would look from far away. At one point I had this level of rendering and I had a very specific type of art style that I had in mind. Maybe one of you will recognize what I'm talking about, but you know the type of painting where things just kind of mold in together. So you'll see his fingers kind of blending into her hair and like his arm into her body. So that kind of thing where it's like very loose and it's like it's more concentrated on shapes, like the same thing with her hair. Like there's no clear, you know, it's all just like really nice shapes and colors. And I was really trying to do that, and I tried to make it work for the longest time because I didn't want to go in and do line art. That was like the one thing I was really trying to avoid doing, because the whole point was really experimenting with painting and just kind of going out of my comfort zone. But I remember at this point I was extremely burnt out and very worried about the piece. I did not know what direction to go. I didn't know like what looked good. I didn't think that this looked finished, even though I kind of liked this level of rendering, but I felt really ashamed with how long it had already taken me to this point for the level of rendering that this was. I was kind of in a crisis because I didn't want to line art, but if I wanted this to come out any form of like acceptable for my standards, I would kind of have to do some line art in order to bring it bring the quality up. So you'll see me here basically doing the line art backwards. So I already did the base colors in the painting, and then I say fuck it and I just go in and do some lines. I'm honestly glad I did, but only because I was able to create a product that I could turn in and be proud of. But the aspect I'm not proud of is that I ended up having to resort to my comfort zone, which is what I was trying to avoid in the first place. Unfortunately, that is a lesson, you know, to be learned, and sometimes you just have to do that, because that ultimately is my fault for attempting to experiment in a situation where I knew there was a deadline. I knew that I had to deliver something of quality, and I didn't really want something that was going to be like on a platform so official like Spotify to be something that wasn't truly up to my standard. And so you'll see here that I basically start over. Like, I line art, I flat color, and I'm basically starting over. And this was really frustrating because I don't know if it was at this point or maybe a little bit later in the piece where I've already asked them to extend the deadline. I was like, I basically had to start over. I'm extremely art blocked, and Ruben was just so nice about the whole thing. Not only did they extend the deadline this time, but they extended it the first time when I told them that I was going to be going on a trip and I had some deadlines to begin with, so he would have to wait like a month already in order for me to like start, and he told me that he would wait for me. So they extended the deadline twice. I already was kind of caving under all sorts of pressure, and I remember these days very clearly. And those of you that are artists, or just anybody that deals with deadlines in general, you know how it is, like the lack of sleep, the lack of like self-care, and all sorts of things like showering, eating, you know. I remember these days, and man, not fun. But the piece in and of itself was a really fun one. I learned a lot about my own process, about my comfort zones, my limits, experimenting, color picking, all sorts of things. And for that, I think it was ultimately worth it. But I seriously only got lucky because of how nice my clients were. So I do not recommend experimenting on a deadline piece. You'll see now as the piece is going, it's starting to look more close to what the final piece looks like. The colors are coming in, and I really just fell in love with the pinks and the blues. I'm super biased to pinks and blues with a splash of orange and salmon in there. Just amazing color palette. So I really liked the original blue and orange because blue and orange is also one of my favorite color combos. More specifically, like teal. Teal and orange are just so pretty together, and I was gonna go that route, and I do like the original. And now that I'm looking at the speed paint, I kind of wonder what would have happened if I had just gone back to that. But the saturated colors on the blue and the pink just looked so pretty, and I could not help myself, so I decided to just go this route instead. Sometimes you just have to accept that a piece turned out a certain way and just let it go. And and maybe in the future you could redraw it for fun or something. But in the present, I think it's good to learn to just let go and say, okay, I did what I did in this piece, I learned what I learned, and I'm gonna apply that to the next piece. Because if you just mull over the same thing over and over and just kind of lose sleep over it, just not good for your mental health, in my opinion. And that's something that I do all the time. So, you know, not me being a hypocrite, but I'm getting better. I promise I'm getting better. I will not lie, I definitely mulled over this one for like 2 or 3 days after that because I had spent so much time on it. Now that I'm looking back, for sure, I definitely wish I would have done some things different. But at the end of the day, I am pretty proud of the final result. Here you'll see me really struggling trying to find the right flow of the hair, because not only the flow, but to make sure that the focus remained in the middle of the cover. I wanted her hair to be fun and saturated, but there were certain parts of the piece that I was making a little too saturated and it was taking away the focus from the middle of the piece. So here you'll see me redrawing his head as well. I was just not happy with the anatomy. It didn't look as tender as I wanted it to, and I felt like the tilt of his head really took away from the impact of the background. I actually wonder if I can even explain this correctly, but here's a good example. Like, you know, when you're trying to draw something, a scary face, like a creepy one, if you mirror one side to the other, like wide eyes, whatever, and you mirror it, the extreme symmetry of it will make it creepier. Like the symmetry is done on purpose, like the copy paste. Well, the same thing here. I feel like making it just like a profile, like quote unquote boring, you know, profile to profile, I think makes it that much tender because it doesn't distract from like the moment. Because if you add too much nuance, kind of, in my opinion, like the little head tilt with all of that, I feel like you lose, especially if you're like, it has to look good, like zoomed out. I think as a silhouette, like you can tell better what's happening and it looks nicer. I don't know. I kind of just went on a tangent on that, but hopefully somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about. So that was pretty much my thought process when I changed that there. Originally, he was going to be bald because I really wanted her hair to just be like, not the focus, but I just thought she had so much hair and it was so pretty that if I gave him hair, it would kind of distract from that. But I added the blue to his head and I was like, wait a minute, I actually really like how this looks. And so I played around with that idea, especially since the drawing was just so heavily like pink and blue and the orange undertones like splashed in. I really like the idea, especially since the blue really blends in with the background. Like she's still the focus, even though he has like the blue hair, and the pink on her hair really balances with the bottom of the picture, which is also like pink and salmon. So I feel like it kind of worked out. Now as the picture is going, I remember having another series of panic attacks here because I could not figure out what level of rendering I wanted. I was just so baffled at where to go with this. I started with the painting. I wanted to commit to the painting. It didn't work, so then I had to make the lines, but the coloring was already like painted, so I had to basically find a middle ground between the lines and the painting, which I usually don't super do, and when I do, it's already done like with the line art first. I don't know if that makes sense, that there's a difference between that, at least for me, because like the lines, just having the lines like pre-done already changes like the way that I tackle the whole piece. And I felt like even though I redid the lines and the color, my brain was already in like painting mode, and like the background was painted. Like I just couldn't go back to like soft cell shading and like half painting. My brain was already committed to this painting. So I was really trying to figure out like how to make it work. And I was still struggling with the quality because, like I said, for the amount of time that I spent on it, I didn't feel like the piece like really showed that. You'll see me trying to figure out, like, I have the lines, the colors look kind of nice, but like it doesn't feel finished. And I just kept adding things, moving things around, trying to fix the flow of her hair, where the shine goes, the values, the composition, to really make it feel good. I decided to redraw his face with a little more like facial structure. You'll see me here really trying to add more planes to his face. I don't know if that makes any sense. I looked up some references to try and help me, like, guide me away from like my style, which was just not making him look right. It just looked like I copy pasted her face onto the other side. And so I am super happy. I think if there's anything that I really like is the shapes and coloring of their faces. I absolutely love just how much like bounce, I guess, their faces have. Like they feel really tangible, I guess. Like I'm really happy with the planes and like the squish of their faces. And you'll see here also me really leaning into adding some more accents to the drawing. I gave her some blue accents. I absolutely love her blue eyeliner. I am dying for it. I was gonna add the little blue star. I think I ended up, did I end up getting rid of it? I think I did. I've been looking at this piece for so long, sometimes I don't even remember what the actual finished drawing looks like. I added a little braid to kind of add some more detail to the other side to balance out his hair and the detail in his, and I just absolutely love what direction this piece is going in. Here you'll see me finally finishing up the drawing. At this point, I feel much more relaxed because I think the biggest part that was stressing me out was the center of the piece. Obviously everything else that I mentioned, but the center of the piece was the most important to me, into just really giving that oomph, like to really bring your eye there and just feel the warm tenderness of the whole drawing. Because if that didn't land, then the whole piece was kind of like, not meaningless, but it just wouldn't land. After I re-rendered his face, added the details to hers, fixed his hair, added the braid to hers, I felt like the piece was really coming together. And here you'll see me comparing it, making sure that the values are correct with the black and white, or maybe not entirely correct, but more so just like the vibe that I wanted. You'll see me also going back and forth between like grabbing the colors from the old piece and kind of overlaying it as a color layer on top to make sure that I didn't lose my way. Because usually when I do paintings like this, I will go back to a previous version and kind of copy the colors and overlay them just to see that I haven't gone too astray. Because, you know, it's the same principle, at least in my mind, where you're doing a sketch and then you start doing the lines and you kind of lose the motion of the original. So that's kind of what I was trying to do to make sure that I didn't lose like the feeling of the original. So you'll see me here overlaying the other one, making it a little bit lighter, less contrast. I tend to have a bad habit with with wanting to add way too much contrast, way too much saturation. And not to say that those things are bad. I feel like you should draw things the way that you want to draw them. There are quote unquote rules in art, but at the end of the day, the rules are only as important as you want to make them. The back part of her hair, after I kind of found the balance I liked on their faces, was the part that took me the longest to figure out. I just couldn't figure out the level of detail and where I wanted her hair to flow. And then on top of that, how I was going to render it. I think that was so incredibly difficult for me. And if you watched up to this point, and maybe if you caught the amount of times that I've changed the back of her hair, then you'll know what I mean, because that part of the hair has gone through so many iterations, and it was just finding a good balance between like rendering, saturation values, and flow in a way that it looked pretty, it looked finished, but not distracting. You'll see me like trying to like desaturate it just a little bit, add some backlighting so your eye doesn't go completely there. But there's a way to get your eye to a place if it's unfinished. Like if it's very blatantly unfinished kind of, or the render level varies heavily, then your eye will just be like, oh, that one of these things doesn't belong here. So once I did that part of her hair there in the front, her hairline, you'll see that it's very like pale and it like blends into her skin. It's such a pretty color. It's like a very, very, very light, like pastel, like salmon color. And it's so pretty with no lines. And then I finally understood what I wanted to do. And so you'll see there that in the back of the hair, I tried to follow with that same color, that kind of style where it was very minimal on the lines and very pastel-y in the middle, so that it looked pretty, but your eye wasn't completely distracted by it. And I was just so happy. I think that her hairline is one of the things I'm most proud of after the faces. I absolutely love that art style, and I really want to try that painting style again at some point. But anyway, yeah, that was the entire speed paint. Hopefully it wasn't too fast. I know this video is going to be extremely long, so if you've watched up to this point, hopefully you enjoyed. And go ahead and listen to the song. It's called Lean on Me by Ruben. I'm gonna go ahead and link it down below so that you guys can check it out. Subscribe, join the Nippy family. The more the merrier. I'll put all the links down in the description below. Let me know what you thought in the comments section, and I will see you guys next video. Bye.